is another episode of the Manufacturing Margin, and our wonderful participant here is Curt Anderson, who's going to give us some insight about e-commerce and is a evangelist and a great awareness in terms of custom manufacturing. So, Curt, why don't you give a little background on how you've come to all this knowledge and wisdom for manufacturers?
Sure, Mark. Thanks. Appreciate it, man. I don't know if I'd call it wisdom. Just it's been a long time. So I got into e-commerce. I had a wholesale business in 1995. I don't know. Were you even born by that time, Mark? I don't know. You look so young, man. I don't know. So
I
I
was
got
there
into
with John
e-commerce and
Kennedy.
what's that?
I was there with John Kennedy.
Yeah. Well, I'm right behind you. So, my claim to fame, Mark, was my accountant said that I was one of the biggest train wrecks, one of the biggest disasters that she'd ever met. That's a true story. And in 1995, out of sheer desperation, running out of options, I got this whole brand new thing. I don't know if you remember, America Online was sending out like those little CDs to everybody, DVDs.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, I might as well try this e-commerce thing. And it took a long, long, long time. But we had a company ended up having a really nice run. There's a magazine called Internet Retailer. We landed on top 1,000 e-commerce companies 3 years in a row on Internet Retailer. Of course, Amazon was number one. I was always down like in the 800s. And so I was very blessed. I ended up selling that company. And since that time, my purpose, my mission, my passion has been helping manufacturers figure out this whole e-commerce thing. And so that's kind of my backstory, if you will.
Right. Well, most excellent. It's a key piece of our puzzle. As more and more business manufacturers and special custom manufacturers are trying to get value and leverage all of this cool new stuff to make themselves a safe fortune. Why don't you bring up, Curt, some of the things that you've seen as the highest value that e-commerce brings to folks?
Yeah, great question, Mark. So, as I started working with manufacturers probably like 2012, just trying to figure out this e-commerce thing. I kept every time I'd call on a new manufacturer, I kept hearing over and over. I'm like, hey, tell me about your business, and they were like, oh, we're the best kept secret or best kept secret. I just kept hearing that over and over. And I'm like, man, I don't know if that's a good marketing strategy. So I wrote a book. It's called Stop Being the Best Kept Secret. And so I think with e-commerce, it just helps small manufacturers to just do that, stop being the best kept secret. And the big thing about that is, diving into, you and I were talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go.
You and I were talking prior about, custom manufacturers. And I feel a lot of times the custom manufacturer feels left out of the e-commerce party because they don't have that proprietary product or that finished good per se. But the thing is, they have a proprietary process. In that proprietary process, that's where they have just an incredibly powerful e-commerce opportunity, is taking advantage of their process. So, we were talking, before we went live, we are talking a little bit about, there could be configurators,
Right.
having a customer portal. I can't tell you how many clients, why, as a matter of fact, a big reason why people come my way is this. A customer will say to the manufacturer, why do you make it so hard to buy from you? And that right there is just a huge red flag. Just, bells are screaming. And so they're like, okay, we've got to find an easier way because they've created so much friction. People don't want to do phone calls, fax machines, POs. They want to just log in and they just want to place their order. And so, it's customer portals, configurators on the custom side. And then of course for OEMs, just full blown e-commerce. And there's a lot of options there.
Right, right. No, I mean the times I once had a metal manufacturer who they were doing their configuration. They were taking the spec on what they basically made custom rooms, and they'd take the spec on paper
Mhm.
and the amount of misproduction that occurred, and this was in a lot of these folks, you don't know what's happened until you ship it to the customer. So now you're weeks behind, and you've just ruined my profitability. And
Right.
it's just such a key place, and the other thing that people don't realize is, until you get into this, the whole impact of this on quality control and then getting a higher margin on your product. I mean, that's really the crux of this, which is, what we're trying to expose with this podcast, which is like, there are ways that you actually can increase the margin that you get, and stop whining. It's like, it's really key though, but you've got to do it in very certain ways. Things are very tight and competitive for folks. So, these tricks of using some of this automation at the key place, one of the other places in e-commerce that's so important, is in terms of things like custom discounts for, if I've got different pricing tiers, or I've got different algorithms in place based on the type of customer, things like that. And those are pieces that, again, when it's written into the e-commerce interface or back on the main ERP, it's like, it's now going to execute this, and the user doesn't have to be the only one who is the sort of master of this. I mean, you hope to God on the quality, the good nature of good people, but again, we have to also ensure that the quality is there in our product when we've got hundreds of people working on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And being the e-commerce ERP expert that you are, that e-commerce side, I think you're hitting it right on the head. It just marries extremely well because it takes potential lose-lose situations. Like you said, there's human error, there's a mistake. I shipped the wrong product, shipped the wrong size, whatever the mistake might have been. I mean, now just everybody feels horrible about themselves. And with e-commerce, it just creates it hopefully strengthens that accuracy to create those win-wins where now the person on the buying side, they can buy exactly what they want, what they need. They can customize it. We don't have to go back and forth on, dozens of emails, especially on that configurator side. If,
Right.
it is such a configurator for a manufacturer is just such a powerful competitive advantage, and especially, I'm a Gen Xer, for folks that are Gen Z millennials, they don't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to go back and forth. I was on a call last week with a Gen Zer, and she's like, if I can't book a reservation on my phone at a restaurant, like I'm not going there. And so, our buyers, think about this, Mark, like the digital, I'm a digital immigrant. And, so anybody born before 1980 is a digital immigrant. Everybody born after, I mean, they're 44 now. I mean, it's not like these kids are just getting them out of college. These people, this generation is buying, and just to stay competitive, you've got to make it as simple as possible,
Yep.
remove that friction. And like you said, I mean, it goes right down the line. Uh, Ease of use, ease of purchase, ease of internal operations, like you're saying on the ERP side, and then just getting accurate product out there in a more efficient, more timely manner. It's just a win-win-win right down the supply chain.
Yeah, I mean, it just it ups the process of communicating and engaging the
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah.
So, you store it on a e-commerce portal, which allows me to buy this thing or define what it is, and all the characteristics in my configuration of whatever you make. And within minutes, not only is that communicated to the shop floor potentially, but can be communicated back to the customer to say your stuff is in production now, or it's through phase one in production. I mean, if you want to get really, tight about it, the Amazon model, we've just brought your thing to St. Louis and working on it more.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that makes a huge difference, when you realize how expensive customers are for people to acquire. The idea of how you can cement with these automations, you can cement so much of the intention of care. I mean, if I'm an owner operator and I'm really trying to show you that I am a good producer who makes really great things, you know, having a breakdown in communication until 6 weeks later is certainly a trouble. And that's why, I mean, putting in push communications programs along the way with e-commerce and whatever other, workflows going on is such a, I mean, we've all experienced it because of Amazon and everything else, but it's like it's made a huge difference. Now, again, like that girl, it's like, would you buy something and not be disappointed if you didn't hear that it was on its way, right? In 10 minutes or,
Right. Right. You know, and gosh, I attention of care. I couldn't love that line of yours more. You know, I mean, that's just phenomenal. And I think what manufacturers are finally realizing in the past, there was a bit of who's behind the curtain. We want to be the best kept secret. We don't want to like expose ourselves. What you're describing is just that over the top, healthy communication and transparency. And back to the restaurant situation, there's a restaurant my wife and I love to go to. They have huge window and you can see all the workers, all the cooks, everybody, so I mean, I can physically watch, it's a phenomenal Italian place, very famous, like in our corner of the world. And, so it's just that transparency. So let's take, you're, say you're a 50 person custom manufacturer and you landed a gig with Lockheed Martin, this is a big, Boeing, you name it, a Fortune 500, Fortune 50, right? And that person say if you're on the East Coast and that person is at Boeing on the West Coast, and Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon West Coast time, they need to know something, but you've clocked out. Now they've got to sit there and their customer needs something, or internally they need information. They could log into their customer portal, click a few buttons, and as you're describing, this is where we're seeing it now with healthcare, hospitals. Where are you at in this process, right?
right.
It's now it's human nature, it's human need, and it's being respectful. I hate to say it's almost being disrespectful to your customer if you're not communicating with them. You know what I mean?
Well, it also, I mean, in a world where, manufacturers as well as everybody else have been included in being exposed as not always brilliant players, and I think, like you're saying, what we're in a world where so many poor players do questionable things,
Mm-hmm.
that the more that you expose that, again, it becomes an asset to your brand and an asset to your company to go, like, we actually make good toothpaste, we actually make good motors, we make good fittings. It's like, if you talk to an engineer about the difference between, something that is really solidly built versus something that's poorly cast or going to be breaking, or the components are going to break, it's like, I mean, I feel this, but it's like it's unethical.
Mm-hmm.
That we're working in a world where half of the time you go to the store, and that store owner, as a distributor, has an expectation, which is there might be a 20 to 30% break fail on a product line. That's what our manufacturing, or foreign manufacturing, has come to be as acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Half of this stuff is made out of plastic. That
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think that there's a huge wave of people who are trying to make good things in America and throughout the world, but they're not. It's not just this undercut, do it cheap. Let me see if I can get it over your head without you seeing. I think that there's a huge wave coming back the other side, where the more I can tell you that I care about you, I've listened to you, we are doing it right, we do take care of our people, we buy the right things, we run a good shop. Everybody, to the driver who's going to deliver it, is a swell person, and you should be our friend forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that absolutely brilliant. I just, I think you shout it from the rooftops, right? I love what you're saying there, Mark. And the thing with what e-commerce can do for small manufacturers, especially those custom manufacturers, you know, again, God bless them. They're just, they're engineering minds, or they're makers, they're innovators, they're creators. Not always, like you're saying, maybe communication or marketing was not a priority in the past. that type of thing. The nice thing is what e-commerce does is when you talk to a custom manufacturer, like, hey, what do you do? I'm a CNC shop, or I make circuit boards. Well, who do you make circuit boards? Well, we could do it for anybody. We can, like, well, wait a minute. I mean, I hear you. I understand you could probably do it for everybody, but when you try to be everything to everyone, jack of all trades, master of none, like, then you talk to that custom manufacturer and you find out 60, 70% of their business is in auto or aero or food or agriculture, or, and they're like, oh, like, that's your sweet spot. Yeah. We really crushed it here. Okay. Now we've niched it down. Now we've narrowed it down. Then you talk to them a little bit further. Now, well, we make, these particular parts that go into a tractor or aerospace or, okay, well, that's your sweet spot, right? Yeah. That right there. I'm like, bam. Okay. That's your e-commerce opportunity.
Right.
That's because, like, if you make it for a tractor, does that same part, can that go into an airplane? If you're making it for an airplane, can it go into a helicopter? Can it go into a drone? So now when you've niched down, you get into your lane, now I'll geek out for a second, e-commerce of like, okay, now we can start going after SEO. Now we can start pursuing specific keywords because we're not just targeting, hey, I'm a CNC shop. I'm a 3D printer. I'm a circuit board manufacturer. Now I'm a circuit board manufacturer for the aerospace industry that does this part, or I do this for now I can get more specific, and now we want to own that. And like, to your point of like just that transparency of just crushing it, man, we're going to stay in our lane and we're going to just deliver a great product here. And now, instead of being everything to everybody, that e-commerce keeps you right in your lane, right in your wheelhouse, just makes your company more efficient, stronger, in what you're preaching today, just a better communicator.
Yeah, I mean, and again, one of the things that we're certainly always ringing the bell of, which is the ability, I mean, we're in a world now where between ERP, between e-commerce, when you've got those weird things, we can build things to accommodate. There's enough ability to make an outward call to process some odd piece of workflow, so that we get the advantage of a functional, tested, module,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have the ability to conform to our own workflow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And so, back, and that ties in with the configurator, right? Of like, being more specific. And the thing is, now by niching down instead of trying to be everything to everybody, and then, in every, we've all done it. I've, as a service provider, manufacturer, somebody knocks on your door and you're hungry for business, you want to keep machines running or keep people working, and you take a bad, something that's out of your wheelhouse. You take a bad, order, bad project, that type of thing, and you slide out of it, by narrowing down that focus. And like you're saying with those processes, now you can, now you're buying more raw material. Now your costs are going down. Now you're being more efficient. Now you're executing sharper with your ERP. Now you're just creating more economies of scale to just, and really dominate that portion of the market of what you can niche into.
No, I mean, and a lot of that is getting the data back quickly,
Yeah.
getting, and incorporating into the whole of the system the tribal knowledge of those brilliant elders who are running the operation, who actually know how to make money, right? I mean, a lot of this is making it so that the knowledge someone has who actually knows this business filters into the automation, into all the other operators and users,
Mhm.
so that we all comply with what our brilliant tribal knowledge is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. I totally agree.
Well, most excellent. I so appreciate your time, Curt. I think that people will really get a sense that this stuff can help them, even if they're not Fortune 500s.
Yeah, just a small, you can be a 5 person, you could be a solopreneur and taking advantage of these opportunities. So Mark, thank you, man. I appreciate this. Wishing you massive success with this wonderful podcast, and I love your mission, and keep preaching, my friend. I
Great.
appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Take care.
Take care.